Hi, welcome back to Educator.com. Today we're going to complete our writing section work and we're going to have our grammar mistake petting zoo. First, our legal disclaimer: test names are the registered trademarks of the respective owners. Said owners are not affiliated with Educator.com. The College Board was not involved in the production of and does not endorse this course. This section is going to be about telling you about all the mistakes that you will wind up seeing for the most part on the writing section. So to be able to do the multiple choice part of the writing section, you have to understand grammar. You have to understand good formal English grammar. If you want to be able to do well on it, you have to catch these mistakes. So this lesson is going to introduce you to the most common kinds of mistakes that you'll see in the writing section, our grammar mistake petting zoo. But remember, this is not a complete list. This is not a complete list. There are more grammar mistakes out there that can be on the SAT. So this lesson won't show you every single kind that you'll see, but these are the ones that you're most likely to see. These will make up the majority of them. If you want a more comprehensive list or to explore any of these things in depth and really understand what's going on with the grammar and get a better, deeper understanding so you can catch the mistakes more easily, if you have difficulty with grammar and want to brush up on any of those skills, these would be all good reasons to check out the SAT writing specific lessons on Educator.com. So we've got more information, all this stuff if you want to dive in and learn more or really improve at these skills. But this is a good first place to start and get a sense of what you know and what you're uncomfortable with and how much ability you have in catching grammar mistakes. All right, so let's just jump right into it. We're going to hit all the big culprits that you'll wind up seeing for errors. First off, subject-verb agreement. The subject and the verb have to agree, and so we're going to talk about verb conjugation. That might sound like a weird word, but if you've ever studied any foreign language, you've been formally taught about this. And if you're used to speaking English, you've definitely done it every single day of your life. Verb conjugation is part and parcel of speaking English, but you might not notice what you're doing. So depending on the subject, the same verb behaves differently. This is what verb conjugation is. Depending on what the subject is, the verb will change, it will sort of metamorphose into a slightly different version depending on it. So for example, the verb to be, if something to be. So I am, you are, he, she, it is, we are, they are. In most of these cases, we see different versions of the word. So to be transforms into a different word. To be is a special case. It's an irregular verb, but even in the regular ones, we'll still see changes. Like, for example, he, she, it reads. For I read, you read, we read, they read, it all uses just read, but he, she, it becomes reads with an S at the end. So depending on what our subject is, the verb will change. We have to make sure that our subject and our verb agree when we're looking for mistakes. So questions aren't going to just make it obvious by saying, he, she, it read. It's going to be something where they're going to separate the subject and the verb so it's hard to tell what's going on. You have to make sure that the verb matches the subject it's referring to even when they've been separated from each other. So for example, our first one, how about the dolphins, along with a shark, was impressed by the large wave? Well, at first listen, that might not seem that bad because we've got shark was impressed. But the shark isn't the key point here. We actually want to think of the shark part as the middle clause that we're going to knock out. What we're really talking about is we're really talking about the dolphins. So the dolphins was impressed? That doesn't make sense. The dolphins were impressed by the large wave. And so that's how we get what's going on. We have to drop that middle clause that's obscuring it, that's making a fairly simple sentence into a more complex one. If we can take that complexity out of it and look at what the sentence is without that extra complexity, we'll be able to catch the mistake that much more easily. Similar thing going on here, but the other direction. The suffering of the students were made worse by a rule against blinking. At first glance, we might think, oh, students, so students were, but that's not the case. Students isn't the subject here. So if we drop this, the thing that we're really changing here is we're talking about the suffering. What is happening to the suffering? The suffering were made worse? That doesn't make sense. Suffering were made worse. Suffering is singular, so it can't take were, a plural form. Instead, we use the suffering of the students was made worse because suffering connects to was. Suffering was. The suffering of the students is just there to modify suffering. Of the students isn't the subject, it's just a modifier on suffering. So what it really is the suffering was made worse by a rule against blinking. What's the suffering? It's the suffering of the students. So the suffering of the students was made worse. We want to be able to notice these things that are in the middle that are making the sentence more complex and be able to sort of take them out for a little while and go, oh, now I see the error.